everybody, and welcome to How's That Working For You? My name's Bryan Robinson. I'm the shrink.
And I'm Monica Parker, and I'm Smarty Pants.
Boy, is she ever. Smart as a whip. And whip smart, actually.
So our mission today is, for some people, How's That Working For You is doing just fine. And for some others, not so much, because they keep repeating the same mistakes over and over again. And you know what happens when you do that? Repeat, sink. So today, we are very excited that we have someone who has never repeated the same mistake. Andy, you don't make new ones either. You are good to go. I said today that you never met a closed door that you couldn't find a way through. Would you agree?
I believe a closed door should leave you to whatever the window is on either side, and you lift the window and you crawl through the window.
I rest my case. Yes. So I want to start with your unusual start in Hollywood. I mean, apparently your first job was the guy on the Universal tram line.
I went to Texas Tech in Lubbock. I did not know anyone in Hollywood. I didn't know how Hollywood worked. And I got to the day I graduated, I flew to Los Angeles the next day, and I knocked on every studio door, was rejected by everyone because I didn't know the system. And by chance, they were having auditions at Universal Studios to be a tour guide. And I thought, well, that's a movie studio. And that was my first job. And probably to this day, one of the hardest jobs I ever had to audition for. And I owe a lot to that job.
Wow. So I have a question. I have two. One, what did you have to do for your audition? And two, what did you do when you were on? They were 3 hours long. I've been on those tours. What did you do when you came across a production that was shooting?
Well, so part one, this was when the Universal Amphitheater still existed, and there were literally hundreds upon hundreds of people in there, and we were just like a cattle call audition. And you got on stage, and you were just supposed to talk about any movie you wanted to talk about. And for whatever reason, Willow was on my mind, and I started talking about the movie Willow and probably told some funny jokes. And then they kept asking me to come back, and eventually I think they whittled down from many hundred down to about 75, and then down to about 30 that started the class. And the class was 2 weeks, and at the end of the class I think they graduated 13 of us. But they taught us in that class. The tour is much shorter now, but then it was about a 3-hour tour. It was, you could have done that or got on the minnow and gotten lost on Gilligan's Island for about the same amount of time. And we had what was called stall material. And stall material was, it's a working studio, and you would stop, the light would be flashing, and you'd look around and see what you could get everyone on the tram to look at that might be interesting. That might be, oh, if you look over, we're in Times Square, you might remember that from Back to the Future. It's also where Harold Hill did, marched his trombones through on Music Man. So you just kept trying to stall for time. And that's what the classes really taught you, was a deep appreciation and education into the history of Hollywood.
That's pretty amazing. But then, as if I'm right, and correct me, from there you went to leap to the place where you ran Bette Midler's company and Gene Wilder's company? Was there a direct through line?
Then I ended up getting a job as a in the mailroom of an agency called Triad, which, fun fact, Triad then merged with William Morris, and then merged with my agency Endeavor, and I am now literally represented at the same company where I started in the mailroom. I just swapped sides, and I did that for a while and learned the business end of it. And by chance, I met Gene Wilder's producing partner, Susan Ruskin, who now currently is the head of AFI and one of the best producers and educators in the country. And uh, I ended up becoming director of development for Gene Wilder. And that was like my heart skipping many beats. And while I was doing that, I started a theater company because I knew I wanted to write and direct and produce, but I didn't have a reel. I didn't have access. And everybody was an unknown in the theater company. Molly Shannon, Ann Heche, Andrew Schaefer, John Lee Hancock, John Zinman, Patrick Massett. And the theater took off. And ultimately, we built what is now where the Hudson Theater is located on Santa Monica and Hudson. We built the Fountainhead Theater Company. And then, so I was doing that. And then I went to Bette Midler's company and headed up development. I was the all boy at All Girl Productions. And years later, I got the chance to direct The Divine Miss M and Parental Guidance with Billy Crystal. So I went from being working for her to working with her, I guess. And then I left that company and went to an amazing company, Verna Hara, who had a company called Middle Fork, previously Cinema Line, and Anaconda was our first big movie. And
Oh, yeah.
around that time, it was kind of time for me to start focusing on my own path, sort of in terms of directing and writing and producing. And so all of those steps, everything I've done from tour guide to now, all of those are valuable steps. Many challenges, but I'm blessed to have had every one of those opportunities.
So, Andy, I have a question. What you're describing is an amazing career on the outside. What was on the inside of you that your tenacity, where did that come from to go from a tour guide to where you are today?
Um, I grew up in Texas, originally West Texas, Midland, and there was a little
I'm
theater
sorry.
that Midland, Texas. And there was a little theater that my father, who passed away when I was 16, was very active, the Midland Community Theater. And he was a geologist and a paleontologist for Shell Oil. And at night, he would go to the theater and work on shows. And so I grew up seeing that you had to put the work in. Nobody was coming to you, you put the work in. And it was a work ethic that I so appreciated. And I didn't realize I was learning at such a young age. But it was also, he loved theater so much and film and television. Didn't need to be the star on Broadway to do it. He just enjoyed doing
Did your family, were they happy for you when you decided, I'm going to Hollywood?
it. I'm not sure happy is the word. I have two brothers that are lawyers and one brother that's an engineer. So me saying I just graduated from college and I'm going to Hollywood seemed uh, not a smart business decision. My mom uh, asked me right before I left. She said, and she drove me to every audition in school growing up, everything I need to do. Mom was there. But mom said, I don't understand why you're going to Hollywood. How do you think you can make it when so few people can't? And my honest response is, well, somebody has to make it. Why can't it be me? So I never thought I didn't have a chance. I just felt I needed to get there and figure it out.
Andy, you had a great role model, your dad. So we have a question that's been asked from someone on the street. They wanted to know, are there any actors that stood out as role models, as amazing human beings? And did they teach you anything about yourself?
Yeah. Again, I was so blessed working with Gene Wilder and Bette Midler, who uh, I learned so much from uh, as storytellers, as people, as compassionate human beings. And And that time early on was amazing. And truthfully, every time I do a project, I am blessed to learn something. I did You Again, and I had such an amazing cast with Betty White and Jamie Lee Curtis and Sigourney Weaver and Victor Garber. And I remember sitting for hours with Betty White, and we had Cloris Leachman, and I'd have Cloris and Betty on either side, just draining them of knowledge of everything I could learn. And so I feel blessed to have had these opportunities. Billy Crystal not only was a producer on that movie, but a great mentor. And I had two wonderful director mentors, the brilliant Gary Marshall, who not only did he mentor me as a director, but a wonderful actor who I had the chance to direct in film and television, and the wonderful director Dick Donner, who, along with his wife Lauren Schuler Donner, also equally wildly impressive, were great mentors for me early in my career with She's the Man. And I'm a sponge for knowledge. I feel young, old. I feel like I can learn from anybody if I take the time to ask the right questions and just get to know them. I think so many people, everybody has a story, and hopefully we can all learn from each other.
So you're a lifelong learner, is what we would call you.
Definitely.
Are there any incredible? You've had some incredible shows and movies. Is there one in particular that you've produced or directed that's your favorite?
Oh, I always say it's like my children. Depending on the day, maybe I like one a little bit more than the other. Uh, um, I I love them all in terms of the experiences, and I find that each one. Reefer Madness was a musical that we started in that tiny little theater at the Hudson, and
Yeah.
moved it to New York, and we were devastated. We opened during 9/11, and myself and Kevin Murphy and Dan Studney were, along with this amazing cast and crew, we were there in 9/11. It was hard to think about putting on a show days later when you were dealing with the devastation. And then when Showtime called and Bob Greenblatt said, "What if we make it a movie?" And we got to see that all the way through as a journey. Well, that is just such an amazing journey, given the
Wow.
the
It
many.
strikes me, Andy, it strikes me. I mean, I'm listening to you. You have this, first of all, you have the curiosity of a child,
True.
and you have the heart. I'm saying this, I know it's a cliche, but I think you have the heart of a lion. And I think because your curiosity, because you are inherently so curious and so kind, I think people wanted to help you. And you had something else, and the word is chutzpah, and I don't know what's the other word for that. I don't know. Nerve.
I'll take
Nerve.
chutzpah.
Or balls.
Or
Nerve.
balls, yes.
Yeah.
And having that trifecta of things, I mean, not everybody has that. And not everybody has the courage to be with the big guys, the adults, and then go sell yourself. And it strikes me that what you could do was actually sell Andy. Like that, you were fearless in that way. That's what I'm getting from this, because like this wide-eyed kid's going, I can do this.
Well, it's like he said before, he went through the window instead of the door that was closed.
Right.
Yeah, you
I
actually
think
did.
first of all, thank you for saying that's very kind. I I have grown to believe that there's going to be 1,000 no's, especially in the entertainment industry. I'm just looking for the one yes. And I don't know when the one yes will come. It would be great if the one yes came on the very first asking, but that's not always the case. And so I think never giving up is a big thing. I will say this also. When my losing my dad at 16, it was unexpected and shocked my family, myself. But what it gave me was this belief early on that life truly was short and precious. And my mom and my dad had always talked about taking this big world trip. That was always, and they had 4 boys that they were putting through school, and it never happened. And I was always driven by the notion that it didn't happen because of a variety of reasons, but mostly we just push things off. And I just have taken the approach in my career that if I'm going to let someone say no to me as a project, stop what I'm doing, I would have stopped a long time ago. And maybe it's not the right project. Maybe my approach is not right, but I just look at projects and people I'm working with as just long term investments and not short term.
Andy, how old was your dad when he died? You were 16.
He was 54.
Wow.
So, wow,
Yeah.
that's young. So your life has been a legacy to him in a way from
I
what he.
think my brothers and I always talk about it, and my two children always hear us talking about Grandpa Phil. And uh my I feel my mom, who's 93 right now, I feel
Wow.
that she has, she became mom and dad. I have three older brothers, so we all had various lengths of time with my dad. But yeah, I always feel the legacy. My mom will always say, "Oh, your dad would be so happy when I've got a show running on the West End, and that theater in me only comes because of my dad. It's because those are my earliest memories of being backstage, in this community theater while he's prepping Fiddler on the Roof or 1776 or Room Service." And so, yeah, I feel like I want to honor him. And I'm a big believer that the way we honor those who have passed is by living, and that doing what they don't have the opportunity to do. And so if I'm able to do things and bring my dad along for that journey, then I feel a strong win each time that occurs.
I 100% relate to that. I mean, my dad forgot to have a life, and he just didn't. I always said he was like a cork bobbing on the ocean, and whichever way he was pushed, he went. And it was partially post-war. It was partly that. And as a writer, I know that in everything I write, I give my father a life.
Yeah,
A whole new version of him will appear, and I don't know where it comes from, but I know it's him. So I
yeah.
get that. But the other thing that I'm listening to you is you are one of the least cynical people I know. You are the least cynical person I know in Hollywood. And that that I think is what makes everybody want to work with you.
Uh,
I mean, you are as advertised.
I really appreciate. I listen. We're not uh, my father-in-law, who passed away a few years ago, was a major cardiologist at the Mayo Clinic, and every once in a while he would say to me, "Oh, Andy, what you do is so hard." I was like, well, "No, you save lives. I entertain. I feel we're blessed to be in the position to entertain, but we're not curing cancer. We're not on the front lines. We're not first responders. We're not risking our lives." So when people turn the entertainment industry into, catastrophe, it's just make believe. It's if that scene doesn't work, let's change it. If somebody's sick, let's fix it. But we're not. There are people who do might. I'll tell you this quick story, which is true. We have this uh, uh, text chain with my brothers and my mom. And my oldest brother, who has been one of the lead attorneys for the Steelworkers Union for years, he will start the text and say, "Mom, the steelworkers have been on strike, but we finally have made great movement, and we've gotten them better health care and food for their children." And my second brother, Alan, he's an engineer in the state of Pennsylvania, helps keeping the grid on during tragic events. And he'll say, "Mom, it was a blizzard in Pennsylvania, but we stayed up. We kept the grid on. Hospitals stayed going. Everything's great." And my third brother's a criminal defense lawyer, and he'll say, "Mom, I finally, after years of injustices created, I helped this gentleman get off death row and prove that he was innocent, and a life was saved." And I'll say, "Mom, I had lunch with Billy Crystal today," and the only response from my mom is, "I love Billy Crystal." And so that
Andy, that's That's hilarious. But you know, you are an inspiration. Your life is an inspiration. And I would like for our audience to know from you, what would you say to people who stop at the door and don't go through it?
That door is closed for a billion reasons. And maybe none of those reasons have anything to do with you. But if you don't keep trying, you lost right there. That's it. You'll spend the rest of your life wondering, what if, what if, what if? I would rather try. To me, it's the journey. It's the kid who wants to be a football player, and maybe they make it to college, maybe they make it to the pros, but maybe they never make it to the Super Bowl. That doesn't mean they weren't a great football player. They had this career, this life. And I think that those doors and those obstacles force us to do more work, force us to figure out, where's that window? What's my other way in? And I do believe, I'm a student of history, and I believe that history has shown, if somebody gave up, if all of a sudden Einstein got to E equals and it was like, nope, I'm stumped, I'm walking away. If all of a sudden all the great scientists and doctors and thinkers of the world, the greatest artists, if all of a sudden Mick Jagger got halfway through a song and was like, I can't figure this out, I'm gone. It's, of course it's hard, it's challenging, and I just encourage everybody, whatever is in front of them, that door doesn't have to stay locked. And there are so many ways to go around and find your way in. And I always think, in an emergency, they always talk about how a child's in danger, how a parent will have, strength they never knew. They'll crash through a back window to rescue a child. They'll do any number of things because the adrenaline pulls them. That's how I think you have to live life. You have to not settle that door shut.
I'm just getting this vision of you, that this particular, everything you said is 100% true and passionate. And you were like a modern day Jimmy Stewart.
A modern day Jimmy Stewart, I'm good. I'll take that for the rest of my life. That is a pretty good get.
Honest to God, I meant it. We have to wrap up, and I'm so sorry. But we're always looking for a takeaway, and you've given us the greatest takeaway, which is fight for what you want.
Don't take no for an answer. Thank you so much for being with us.
Andy, this was so great. I can't begin to tell you. Thank you for coming to visit us.
What an honor and a pleasure. I thank y'all and wish everybody nothing but the best of luck.
Thank you, Andy, and the best to you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Wow, that was so cool and so great and so inspirational.
What a man. I mean, I didn't know all this about him. You might have.
I'm sorry. He has the greatest parents that ever lived, that raised those boys right. I mean, talk about the takeaway of being given a foundation for your life, that you live.
And not taking no for an answer.
Taking no for an answer.
And that's something we all need to remember. Just because the door closes doesn't mean it can't open, right?
Or dig up a floorboard and go through there.
Yeah.
Honestly, we are so grateful that you got to enjoy this show, and that we're grateful that we had you. Please watch us on our YouTube channel. Thank you for being part of our show.
We look forward to seeing you next time.
Thank you. Bye.